Hey there and welcome. My name is Pete and this is the quarterly channel update video for the summer of 2024. Very fittingly, I just returned from a 2-week-long vacation, a vacation that I hope you guys did not notice too severely. For the first time in a long while, I was actually able to pre-record a few episodes. In total, 3 videos went up while I was away, and I hope that I'll be able to do that again the next time I travel. It's quite a bit of work ahead of time and definitely also somewhat stressful, but it keeps the channel running. The metrics, which are unfortunately not entirely unimportant, don't take quite as much of a dip, and I don't come back with that feeling of having to play catch-up. And so this channel update will be the first video I make after my vacation, which by the way took me to Norway for the 2nd straight year. I think I have fallen a bit in love with that country, and if any of you get the chance, I highly recommend visiting it at least once. But take your time, it's larger than one might think, and has beauty hidden in many more places than just the recommended tourist attractions. So as much as I have missed making videos, I am definitely glad I took the full 2 weeks to explore. Now, as is customary for these channel updates, let us first talk about what happened since the last one, before we then take a look at what's to come. And quite a few things happened actually. We started a new RimWorld series, I took my very first sponsorship, the Pete Complete store moved back to T-Mail, and we are also rapidly approaching the end of the XCOM series. But let's take things one at a time and talk about the sponsorship first, because I would actually like to give you a brief look behind the scenes of how such a thing comes to be. Perhaps this is of interest to some of you, and that's what these channel update videos are for after all, a look behind the curtain of Pete Complete. Now, first of all, what I think you need to understand is that I receive offers, or rather requests, to promote certain games or brands very, very frequently. Several times a week at least, sometimes even on a daily basis. This is not in any way intended to brag about it, it's just how things work once you have assembled a bit of a following, and I would assume that it's the same for pretty much any other YouTuber once their channel has reached a certain size. Now, what's important about this is that the vast majority of these requests that I receive basically boil down to, hey, we have made a game, here's a key, it would be cool if you could play it on your channel. That is the core of the transaction, if you will, a free key, maybe early access, in exchange for me covering the game and presenting it to my audience. Now, fundamentally, there is nothing wrong with that. Oftentimes, these requests come from small independent studios that simply do not have the means to offer anything more, and there is some value in being among the first to play a game that, if it's good or at least unique enough, has the potential to capture a larger audience, an audience that would then hopefully at least partially flock to my channel. Nonetheless, I suppose by now most of you know how much time goes into making these videos. I do rigorous research, write scripts and plans for a lot of them, and oftentimes making a single episode takes me at least 1.5 to 2 full days. Just in case you're interested, I'll link a video that I made to celebrate the channel's 5-year anniversary, describing a bit more of the process behind making a video. Since then, a few minor things have changed, but most of it is still accurate to this day. And ultimately, this also means that I cannot simply take those 1.5 to 2 days and spend them making a video on a game that I have never played or potentially never even heard of before. Sure, there are exceptions, successors to games that I have already played on the channel, games that I already follow closely, things like that, but all in all, the way that I make videos is simply not compatible with the liberty of taking a closer look and recording something on any new game that finds its way into my inbox. Believe me, I wish things were different. There are so many games that I would have loved to cover over the years, but doing so would always mean sacrificing an episode of something that is already established and ideally somewhat successful, and at the end of the day, this economic perspective cannot entirely be thrown aside. I'm telling you all of this to hopefully help you understand why, as a YouTuber who does things the way I do, I find it entirely reasonable to demand compensation if some third party approaches me about playing their game, and thus taking a risk by presenting my audience with something they have never seen before, something that I have no idea about whether or not they will enjoy it. And that is why I was very intrigued when I was approached a while back about doing a sponsored video about capes. Not only because in my opinion, fair compensation was on the table from day one, but also because the game ticks many of the boxes that I personally enjoy and that I hoped you would enjoy as well. So in some ways, a reduced risk and the financial security to just try it and sacrifice an episode of XCOM in its place. The eventual result then was an almost 50-minute long deep dive into the game's first 2 missions, so I think I can confidently say that my video offered some value as well. And at the end of the day, that is what I am concerned with. If I make a video on your game, you can be sure that it's a quality video, and that is what I stand for. That is one of the core pillars of the brand of Pete Complete, if you will. Just to give you a bit more perspective, I honestly hope that I am at liberty to say this, otherwise I might have to cut it out later. The sponsorship agreement for the Capes video actually only demanded a video of at least 8 minutes. So I could have taken the easy way out, something like a top 5 tips for beginners video, cashed in my check and have things be done. But that's not who I am, and that's not who I want to be, neither for you, the audience, nor for the developers and publishers who might approach me in the future. I want you and them to know that when I take on a sponsorship, I do not do so lightly, and that when I do, I deliver quality, and that quality does have its price. I think that's only fair. Why do I tell you all of this? Well, mostly it's to reassure you that Pete Complete will not be overrun by sponsored content anytime soon. I could very well see myself do 1 sponsored video per month, but stuff like the Cape sponsorship that offer fair compensation for the work that I put in are definitely not a daily occurrence, and actively seeking them out would consume additional resources that at least for the moment I would prefer to spend on actually making videos that I know you guys enjoy. With that being said, don't get me wrong, making the Capes video was most certainly a very enjoyable experience for me. I had never done a sponsorship like this before, and communication with the agency that reached out to me on behalf of Daedalic Entertainment was very smooth. Overall, the entire process made me feel a bit more like a professional, if you will, which is sometimes necessary, as over the years this has become so much more than just a hobby for me, and being regarded as a professional makes me feel valued for what I do. Now, I did not plan on talking about this sponsorship topic for the entire video, but it is something that I wanted to share with you in some detail to hopefully help you better understand how I approach these things and how I feel about them. One more thing that probably requires a bit of explanation is the move of the Pete Complete store back to T-Mill. This time I'll try to keep it brief. I care about sustainability and our environment. I think the Polar Bear fundraiser has made that obvious. And I also want to offer you merch as a way to show your support, and of course also as a very small revenue stream. But to be honest, I would need to approach merchandise very differently if it should ever play more than a very minor role in that regard. And in terms of sustainability, and quality for that matter, T-Mill offers almost everything I ever wanted. I say almost because there is one caveat, and that's shipping costs, specifically to the US and any other non-European country. And with a large part of my fanbase located outside of Europe, T-Mill therefore may offer a fantastic product that at the end of the day is still too expensive because of international shipping. So why did I go back despite all that? Well, first and foremost, it's because I'm just too convinced that the overall product they offer, from the storefront to shipping to the actual merchandise being sold, is superior than any of the alternatives that I know about. And I simply find it hard to compromise on quality, something you may have picked up on already. Nonetheless, none of this really solves the issue of shipping costs, which is why I can only remind anyone interested in merchandise of the Pete Complete merch tier over on Patreon. If you run the numbers, supporting me over on Patreon with a pledge to that tier is probably the smarter choice for some of you out there, and while this is of course not the perfect solution, it is a workaround that I am very happy with for the time being. All in all, merchandise will most likely never play a major role for this channel. I've said it a few years ago and I'll say it again, this is a YouTube gaming channel, not a clothing brand or a professional sports team. Nonetheless, if I offer something, I want to do it right, and at the moment, T-Mill just feels right. And that brings me to the last topic of this look back, the start of our RimWorld Anomaly series. I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical about Anomaly at first, and there are still some things about the DLC that I feel could be different, but all in all I am enjoying it very much. In addition, playing on the sea ice is something that I wanted to do ever since we had that first Ice Sheet series, so it all comes together rather nicely in this one. The story at the moment is also a bit more focused, with a smaller group of colonists, something that was perhaps a bit of an issue in the last 2 series, while I feel like we will still eventually be able to have a proper endgame run, something that we kind of got close to in the Extreme Desert series, but never really fully explored. This time I want to go all out with all the late game tech the game has to offer, and I think the anomaly CI setting offers the perfect background to do so. Which then brings me to the admittedly rather brief look ahead and to the other series we still have going on, XCOM 2. We are fast approaching the series finale, and it's about time, I would say, which of course brings us to the big question, what's next? There is no XCOM 3 yet, although there is Chimera Squad, which could be interesting, but it is also not as polished as XCOM 2 was. There are plenty of other games in the genre, of course, Capes actually being one of them, although that too had a bit of a mixed reception. I actually seem to enjoy it a bit more than some of you, and I'm not just saying that because I get paid for playing it. At the moment, the list is wide open. We already did 2 videos on Baldur's Gate, so that could be something to keep playing for a little bit. I also still want to put something out for Miasma Chronicles, a game made by the same folks who brought us Mutant Year Zero, which was very well received on this channel. And there are also a few other entries, mostly older stuff that I never got around to, games like Skyrim, Fallout, Knights of the Old Republic, Alpha Protocol. I think at this point most of you know what kind of games I enjoy. And you definitely know what kind of games you enjoy, so let me know in the comments what you would like to see next. And I think that also brings us to the end of this channel update video that ended up a little longer than I had expected, but there was a lot to talk about. And we also have one final thing to do before we make the cut, and that is to give a shout out to all the lovely people who have decided to join the Pete Complete Patreon since the last channel update video. So, as always, in no particular order, I want to say thank you to Force, Daddy Yanu, Sean Mullally, Jurian Fantasy, Bastian Speakman, Substitute Institute, Kaelan Hansen, Jody Weldon, Mac, Minka, Mercy Viking, Robert Fink, Haha, Martin Allgren, Sylvia, Crowhaven, Jan Hopman, MacGyver, Taro June, Archer the Graph, Archaon, Toasty Coyote, Burnt Kilgar, Thor, Kelly Lian, Toya Archer, Xuniak, Foston, James Sage, Liam Kopik, Arok, Shulk, Vlad Dogoru, Hokidoke, G. Fitty, Savannah, Noah Wilgos, Wilston, Zach the Man, Matthew Jensen, Slothpile, Gnome, Paul Berry, Yuval, Nord, Mike Schwartz, Brock Heilman, Genmar, Peter Niger, Miska, Nick Gamma, L. Luchador, Colin Nesbitt, R. Drellick, Britannia Eva, Christopher Mahoney, Joel, Noah Blunt, John, Big Bad Wolf, and Mecha Hex. As always, I hope I pronounced all of your names correctly and apologize if I didn't. Above all though, thank you all so much for your support. And with that, this channel update video, which marks the halfway point of the year, is over. Let's make the cut. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon too. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.